Awesome. So thank you all so much for joining this Why Electric School Buses LTE. I am Bella Cockrell. I'm the New York State Manager for Mothers Out Front, and I'll be passing it over to Bobby and Kia, other staff members at Mothers Out Front, to lead this training. So thank you so much for coming, and over to you, Bobby.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming. Um, I was going to start us with just like a little overview of sort of the situation in New York, and then we'll pass it to Kia for specifics about writing an LTE. But before I even start, because I'm the Northern Virginia campaigner, and so I don't know a lot of the New York faces. And I don't really have a sense of how much people here know about what's going on in New York with electric school buses. Um, y'all feel free to like unmute and just say like, I know nothing, or I don't need this slideshow, just go to Kia. Just let me know. Because I don't want to, go through a whole thing and then have you guys be like, yeah, I do that.
I know nothing.
I also know nothing, and I've also heard information mentioning that the batteries in electric vehicles can be damaging, and I'm not sure about how those two things weigh up against each other and which is better, which is worse.
Oh,
Not just
I got a lot of info for you. Okay, great.
great.
Um, okay. Well, then good to know. So great point. I did go to a lot of trouble to make this slideshow. So let's get going. Before I even get into what I was going to say in the slideshow, I'll just give you a quick overview of what's happening in New York State to my knowledge. Because again, I'm in Northern Virginia. So raise your hand if you hear me say something and you're like, nope, that's not right. But what I understand is that you have a bunch of school districts, and the reason why I'm presenting on this is because in Northern Virginia, we've done a ton of electric school bus work. So it's kind of like my special interest or whatever. But it's your kind of political scope that I don't know that much about. But what I think I understand is that you have a bunch of school districts that have won EPA awards to get electric school buses. And you have a vote coming up in May that is a public vote, kind of like a town meeting day kind of thing, where you all can vote, your friends can vote, the school board approves a ballot of what's going to be voted on. And one of those items is going to be whether to accept the money that you got from the EPA. So let's dig into, kind of what the situation is with electric school buses. And then we can talk about some specifics about New York and, kind of specific issues that are going on there. So to start with, just in general, electric school buses, the high cost of diesel buses breaks down into kind of two areas for me. One is our children's health. So when I first started working on this issue 5 years ago, some of the first things I learned were about, first of all, in Fairfax County, like where I live, some kids are on the bus for up to 2 hours a day, even more sometimes. And I'm sure that's true in rural areas of New York too. And then what I didn't know and really amazed me is like when you're at the bus stop and you see this big black cloud come out of the back of the bus. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with that if you have kids that ride a bus. Inside the bus, that pollution, all of that particulate matter is concentrated inside the bus up to 10 times. So those particulates are, I don't want to name them all because I'll mispronounce them, but they can cause asthma, they can cause cancer, they can cause heart problems, and they can cause cognitive problems in our kids. So like here in Virginia, we have a really high asthma rate in our county. And that's one of the driving reasons why we were really gung-ho about electric school buses, because it really affects our kids' health. And it is disturbing when you learn how bad it is for them. Next slide. So like I just said, and one of the big things to remember is that our kids are still growing. And so their lungs and their brains are more susceptible to these pollution particles than ours are. Next one. So the other thing that is obviously a high cost of diesel buses is our kids' future. You know, in the face of climate change, like we know we need to bring down emissions as quick as we can. And electric school buses are kind of a low-hanging fruit. One thing to know is that replacing one diesel school bus with electric is like equivalent to taking 100 cars off the road. And if we replaced the entire US fleet, it would reduce emissions by 9 million metric tons per year. So it's significant. And again, when I was first starting this, it was when the IPCC report from the UN, like the first one, came out. And at the same time that I was learning a diesel bus has a lifespan of about 15 years, I was also learning that back then in late 2018 or whatever it was, we had 10 years to really turn back the tide on our emissions to keep it under 1.5 Celsius. And now, 5 years later, we're not making that much progress. And go to the next slide, I'll show you a little graph. The most recent IPCC report came out and said that what we need is by 2030, a 43% reduction from 2019 levels, just from 2019 levels, and a 60% reduction by 2035. And so in New York, the goal is to transition your entire fleet by 2035, which is ambitious, but worth, attempting, because this is a way, when you realize that school buses are the largest mass transit system in our country, there's like 450,000 school buses versus, I don't even know if there are 140,000 public buses. Some people say there's only like 80,000. So it's a huge, huge difference. And it is something that we have control over to some degree. Much more so than personal vehicles, much more so than like commercial fleets. School buses are something that moms and regular citizens can advocate for changing to electric, and we can make a difference. So this is a great place to, channel some effort into. Okay, next slide. So here are some benefits and why some schools are going electric. So here in Fairfax County, these are some of our drivers here that are talking to this guy who's giving them technical assistance. And some of the benefits that schools are finding is obviously it's healthier for our students. There are reduced fuel operation and maintenance costs, and the buses are safe, reliable, and quiet. So a huge thing that the drivers are saying is that because it's quiet, the kids are calm. And it's like better for their mental health. They don't have to scream over it. It's safer because it's quiet. And also, as you'll see in the next slide, there's some actual like driving benefits, the higher torque of the electric engine, and also the fact that the batteries are in the front over the front wheels means that the buses are safer and more reliable in mountainous areas and snowy conditions. So I know in New York, there's a lot of, kind of northern areas that were concerned about how electric buses might fare, and also whether the batteries would stay charged. There's tons of case studies, places in Montana, Colorado, Canada, and I have a whole list that I'll share with you at the end that are doing great. Like there's a tiny reduction maybe in cold weather of the battery storage ability, but not enough to be an issue. And these are places, and it's true for us even in Fairfax, where we have routes that are over 100 miles. And as far as keeping the battery charged and being able to do that range, not an issue. There's lots of places that are proving that true. And then I forget, was it you, Nicole, who said you were concerned about the safety of the batteries?
Like the impact of the batteries on the environment.
On the environment. Yeah. So two things. We can first talk about the actual safety, because I know that that is an issue that I've seen raised a lot of places in New York. And it's the composition of these batteries is actually safer than a like diesel combustion engine. And studies have shown that if a school bus were to catch on fire, which is incredibly rare, it would be more likely to happen in a combustion engine rather than an electric engine. And these lithium iron phosphate batteries are also, I think, a little easier on the environment. It is true the lithium is in short supply. And that's really an issue with, beyond electric school buses, that's an issue with the energy transition. I mean, when you take a look at the things that we have to do to make this transition, there's going to be some choices. But when you look at the net gains and the net emissions, when you make a battery and you mine these minerals, the net emissions are less. And I should maybe attach it at the end or something if I can find it. But there's lots of studies that show that going with the fossil fuel way of fueling the buses or any kind of electric vehicle, is still harder on the environment and still causes way more emissions than the creation of the battery would. So let me see if I can find that while Kia's doing hers, and I can attach it in the chat. And then the other piece is that I think I've seen that in New York, there's a lot of school districts that are just sort of like, hey, you said we can't buy any more diesel buses after 2027. Like, what? And I totally agree with that. Like, that's soon. That's like stressful. And then you're supposed to be fully transitioned by 2035. And what I would say to that is, like, it is stressful and maybe it won't happen, but it's a worthy goal. And when you have this money coming from the EPA, and then you have additional money coming from NYSERDA, like, now is the time to experiment with it. Like, this is gonna happen. It has to happen. And so why would you not now take the money and do a pilot program and get the technical assistance? There's technical assistance available in tons of places if you just know where to look. And that's what we're here for, is to help people find that, whatever they need. But you can get technical assistance from the EPA, from NYSERDA, from WRI, which has a big electric school bus kind of consortium. And then there's like consultants like VEIC that you would pay to come in and just make it happen for you. And then there's also school districts across the country have kind of it's called SLICE, and I have a link to it in the thing I'll share with you at the end, where people who are working on this in schools all kind of can come together and share information. So there's tons and tons of info out there, and we are here to help you find it and connect it with the right people. So next one. So here's just a few things about the financial benefits. This is so important to schools because, they need to show that they're making a smart financial choice when they're doing this, especially if you've gotten money from the EPA and you just need to make up, a shortfall of like being able to put the infrastructure in, or needing to, upgrade your electrical system in your garage or something. There's savings that are right off the bat when you have a bus. It's $6,000 annually in fuel and maintenance costs. And then over the lifetime of the bus, it's about $100,000 of savings. And on top of that, most schools have a budget for diesel buses. So that budget, if you take the EPA money, the budget for the diesel bus can go towards any kind of other upgrades that you need. And there's NYSERDA money for that too. So there's ways to make it work. And then some things that are important to know, nearly 70% of spending on electricity remains within local and regional economies, which is much better than you can say for anything fossil fueled. And then I don't know if people know what vehicle to grid and vehicle to building is. I will just say quickly, because that's a whole topic of its own, but it is really cool. You can plug the bus into the school, like if there's a power outage and your school has kind of a resiliency center or something where people come to gather to be safe or whatever in a storm, you can plug the bus into the building and now the building has power. So yeah, on a per bus basis, yes. Yeah, $100,000 savings for over the lifetime of the bus is pretty darn good. Anyway, so yeah, you can plug the bus into the building and then you have power so people can come when there's a power outage, they can charge their phone, they can get in touch with people, let them know they're okay, whatever they need. So that is a cool use of an electric school bus. And then coming, I think, fairly soon in the future, there's the opportunity to also plug the bus into its regular outlet and for the power to go the other way, back onto the grid to help grid resiliency. And again, a whole topic in itself, but suffice to say, if you set your contract up right, you can get paid for that energy. So your school can make money. And that is how it should be in my mind. And I hope that people will set their contracts up that way. But regardless, you know, grid resiliency is something we all need. And electric school buses can be a big help with that. Okay, next one. So specific to New York State, it looks to me like, from what I understand, almost $23 million was awarded to school districts in New York State. It may be even more than that. There might be some more that I didn't know about. And y'all have a vote coming up on May 21st, most school districts. I think there was one or two that was earlier. And again, that's shared in our little document that we'll give you guys at the end. But if you can do anything to spread the word about this vote, but specifically, we hope that you'll write a letter to the editor because, you know, I think that's a great way of just kind of getting the word out. But we really want people in New York State to know that on May 21st, for most school districts, voting yes for electric school buses, all that means is that your school district will accept the money they have already been awarded by the EPA. It is free money from the federal government. And they can purchase electric school buses and implement a pilot program. So we're not saying transition your entire fleet. We're not saying, you know, all or nothing. It's really an opportunity to learn and test it out and do your route planning and your kind of technical planning and work out the kinks, because there's always going to be that. But it's a great time to do that before this time in 2027 when they say, you know, now you have to buy electric buses. You want to have it figured out before that. No, not every school district. And we have a list that we're going to share with you at the end. So, and there's also, you can look on the EPA website, I think, too, which we will also share with you to see what school districts which ones have been awarded. And another little note about repowered buses, also an affordable alternative. There's a way that you can just take a current existing school bus and put an electric battery in it. So it's a cheaper way instead of buying a whole new bus. So, okay, next one. Okay, so yeah, the whole goal is right of this webinar, and also we hope you'll spread the word. We're hoping to place 50 letters to the editor to let communities know that moms and other allies support the transition to electric school buses. So we really hope you'll spread the word. And we are going to have another LTE seminar on May 6th. So mark your calendar and get your friends to join in. And then I think I have one more slide that just has like a last little, yeah, most votes are happening May 21st. keep spreading the word, ask your friends and family to get out and vote. I mean, how many people here even knew that they had the ability to vote about this? Yeah, I
I
mean,
definitely didn't know.
yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. So, because that's not how it works in Virginia. So when I found that out, I was like, "Whoa, really?" And attending your school board meeting is really the first step. I think, look on your school board calendar, see when the next meeting is, and go to the meeting. And you can find out, kind of when the vote is happening and when they're going to approve their ballot. And you can get up and talk and be like, hey, I want electric school buses in my school district. And again, we will share this handy toolkit for talking points and case studies and key school districts that we're targeting. And my last thing to say is just that I remember when I first started doing this kind of this electric school bus advocacy, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn. It's so technical. I don't want to go and talk at the school board because I don't really know what I'm talking about. But honestly, your school board doesn't know more than you about this. Like and even if they did, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be a mom who cares about her kids' health and their future in the face of climate change, because that's what this is about for us. So I will now pass it over to Kia.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Hello, everyone. My name is Kia Smith. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Senior Director of Communications at Mothers Out Front, and I am coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we write letters to the editor and why they are important. All right, what is a letter to the editor? It's a short note from the reader of a publication about an article that has been published in that publication or about an issue of community interest that you want to shape public opinion around. So the important thing about this is we are using these letters to the editor to shape public opinion with newspaper staff as well as other community members. Letters to the editors are one of the most read sections of the newspaper. I remember even as a teenager getting 17 magazine, and the first thing you read are those letters to the editors in the front page. They are short, they're quick, and they let you know what other people are thinking about, other people in your community are thinking and talking about. Uh, it is an opportunity to share your view on a current issue you feel that is important, and they are typically short, around 120 to 200 words, 2 or 3 paragraphs, straight to the point. Letters to the editors are important because our reporters, legislators, and organizational leaders read these to understand where their constituency stands, and so that that makes it a great way for us to clearly communicate our message to decision makers in our communities and media gatekeepers in our communities. They are easier to place and they than op-eds, and they also reflect a more organic community voice. All right, now we're going to talk about some best practices around letters to the editors. I'm going to give you a lot of general best practices, but the first thing I want you to do is to go to your publication's websites to see what guidelines they have published, because those guidelines are going to be the ones that you want to follow. Draft a short letter. I'm sorry, y'all, I have a husky barking in the background if you can hear it. Draft a short letter under 200 words in response to a community event, an article in the publication, or an issue that is important in your local community. The next step is to make sure we're grabbing the reader's attention. Your opening sentence is going to be the most important sentence of your letter. So we want to make sure that when your readers read it, they want to read more of what you have to say. Explain what the letter is about from the beginning. This isn't a novel or an essay where we want to hook the reader and take them on a journey. We want to make sure that we're getting straight to the point so that the editor or the readers are not waiting to find out what we want to talk about. The key to a letter to the editor is to be quick and concise. Make sure in this letter you're explaining why the issue is important to your community. You are the expert here. The general public probably isn't as informed on the issue as you are, so you want to tell them why it is important to them. And as you're telling them why it's important, make sure we're using simple, everyday language. We want to avoid jargon or inside baseball terms. All the times when we spend a lot of times in the work, some of these terms become normal to us, but the general public will have no idea what some of these terms mean. So make it plain. There's, I think, an Office meme where it was like, explain it to me like I'm five. That's what we want to do with these letters to the editors. Provide evidence. Local statistics and personal stories are going to be what makes your letter stronger and help readers connect to the issue. All right. State your opinion. Remember, we're forming public opinion, so do not be afraid to share what should be done about the situation and who should do it. Sign the letter, include your full name, your location, a title if it's appropriate, and your connection to Mothers Out Front. It can be simply Mothers Out Front member or volunteer. Make sure your letter is clear and concise. Have someone else read the letter to make sure you're communicating what you want to communicate. A lot of times when we write a letter, we know what we want it to say, but we want to have those second eyes on it just to make sure that other people also understand what we want it to say. Submit the letter to the editor to the publication. In the guidelines, you would find that either your local publication will ask that you email it to a certain email address, or they will have a submission page that they want you to send that over to. Once you have submitted that letter to the editor, let us know. Our team wants to track these submissions and publications, so you can email comms at Mothers Out Front a copy of the letter and the name of the publication, and we will track it and share it with our wider network once it's published. So these are some best practices and kind of step-by-step on how to write the letter to the editor. And I wanted to share with you some general message guidance that we want to remember as we are drafting these letters to the editors. Number one, being a mom is your superpower. So we want you to embrace that and use your identity as a parent to connect with others and provide more clarity on the issue. A lot of times we come to this work and we're like, but I'm just a mom. I'm not a specialist on this. I don't understand all of the implications. But what's really our superpower is that everyone identifies with mothers in some way, shape, or form. It's an identity that everyone knows. And mothers have a reputation of having the best interests of their kids and all kids in consideration when they come to an issue. And this is what's going to help elevate your voice and your position in this conversation. And it's also what's going to make your voice unique when you think about the other people who are advocating for climate justice issues and electric school buses. Second, avoid repeating the opposition's talking points, any misinformation or different disinformation that's out there when possible. The way our brain works, when we hear something, it sticks. Even if it's bad information and we know it's bad information, it still kind of sticks there. So whenever possible, we want to avoid saying what the opposition is saying to stop the transition to electric school buses. If we have to, because sometimes you just have to name the big elephant in the room, right? So when we have to, we want to do that quickly and we want to swiftly pivot back to our position and why this is good for our communities. All right. Any questions on anything I have shared? At the conclusion of this, I want to share some talking points with you that have some facts and talking points that you can copy and paste into your letters to the editors. You can make them your own, but I want us to give us a chance, and I will also share sample letters to the editors with you on the other side of this call. But are there any questions about anything I shared or any additional information that you would like to have?
One question, going back to the point that was raised earlier about like there being ideas out there about it being environmentally bad to go with electric batteries and not wanting to repeat that misinformation, can you still emphasize how it's overall better for the environment, like without naming exactly what the opposition is saying, but still putting in the like our side of things?
Yes, yes, that is absolutely what we want to do. We want to always prioritize telling our stories and why this is good for our communities and our kids. And again, you won't always be able to avoid you always want to address the opposition and you won't always be able to avoid repeating it. But when you do, you want to make that as short as possible and always pivot back to how this is good for our communities. Thank you for that question. That was a great clarifying question.
There's a question in the chat that says, what's a tactful way to challenge opposition's talking points?
Great question. Great question. I think it's always part of that is just coming from your position as a mom, right? Moms have this moral clarity and this I'm doing what's best for my kids that automatically invites people in. And when you are challenging the opposition's talking point, you want to center your kids and the safety of your kids because that brings people's guards down, right? Because everyone wants to be for kids. And then you want to be very clear and state clear facts of what is actually true. And then support that. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, y'all. And then support that with a personal anecdote or story that makes your perspective relatable to the reader or decision maker. So center your kids, state the facts, attach it to a personal story or anecdote that makes it that makes your point relatable to the reader. Any other questions?
You mentioned wanting to have like a clear target and a clear ask of what you think should happen. Is there an example that you would give, knowing that lots of us are going to be writing letters coming out of this call?
Yes, I think what's important is to know where your school board is on this. So if there is one member of the school board who is holding up the vote, then you want to name that member and to say, we need you to vote, join us and protect our kids to vote for this transition. If the majority of the people on the school board are for this and it is and they are really trying to make sure the community is with them, then you want your letter to show support and to thank them for moving with this transition. So what's important for that clear call to action is to understand what's happening in your local community and where your school board members own it. And I think Bobby mentioned this earlier. It starts with being in those school board meetings and understanding and showing up there and understanding where they are.
One more follow-up on that is for for those of us who don't know where our school boards are at right now, but who might want to write a letter right away, do you think like a general letter could make sense at first and then a follow-up after we know more?
Yes,
Or-
yes, absolutely, absolutely. That general letter really making sure that your school board is clear that moms are for this transition. That is a great initial framing to start forming the public opinion with school board decision makers, but also with the general public, so more moms who are reading this can say, oh, this is interesting, I didn't know this was happening, so now I'm going to start paying attention. Awesome, awesome. If there are no more questions, some papers limit the number of letter to. Yes. So there are some limits and guidelines, and what's going to be important there is most of those will be printed on the website as they give the instructions on how to submit a letter to the editor. That is also a really important important point, because that's why we want you to invite other people to these trainings, because the more voices we have, the more of a chorus we are. And yes, asking friends to follow up. Alrighty, if that is all for me, I want to toss this back to Bobby or Bella.
Thanks, Kia. I can do next steps, and then Bobby, you can add any additions that you have. But some next steps items we have for you all is to set up a one-on-one consultation with Bobby. If you have any questions or extra support you may need, Bobby's a really great resource for this. So here is her email address, and I'm sure she'll put it in the chat as well. Go ahead and write your LTE and send it out, and CC comms at mothersoutfront.org for extra support as well. Attend your school district's upcoming votes and voice your concerns. In the document that we'll be sending you all after this, we'll show you all of the school districts that are having votes and when, for you all to look at. And attend our May 6th LTE training to get a refresher if you'd like, or just tell your friends and family to join so that we can get more people trained to write these LTEs and get these school boards more on our side of electric school buses and getting all of this free money. I'll pass it over to Bobby to see if she has anything else she'd like to add.
I think you covered it. But just I would encourage everyone, if you want to talk more about it, if you want to get more involved, if you want to volunteer, specifically with electric school buses in the state, please do reach out. I'm totally here for it. So I put my email in the chat, and I also put my phone number. Feel free to call me, text me, whatever you need, whatever's easiest.
Sorry, you
So
said you're
thank
gonna
you
show
all.
us. You said you're
Sorry?
gonna show the list of places now that have
Oh,
this?
yeah. Did we combine that document, Kia? Or should I just put I have one that's like about my part of the presentation, and Kia has one that's about her part. So we can just share both.
Yeah, go ahead and drop it in, and then we'll combine them and share out the combined version via email. Does that
Okay.
work?
Yes. Let me. Oops.
Are there any other questions before we let everyone go for the day? This was shorter than we imagined, so that's always nice.
I have one more question. Sorry to interrupt. What do we do if like our area, like, is there something else we could do if our area did not receive that funding or the potential?
Advocate. Yes, that's a great question. Advocate with your school board to apply for the grants in the next round. So the EPA is going to open the grants back up in the fall, and you'll have another chance to apply for, as much money. And it's really good to connect with your school board in advance so that if it wasn't on their radar screen, you can put it on, and you can say, like, look, I have all these resources to help you. People who will fill out the grant, like, paperwork for them, like, all they have to do is say they want to do it, and people will swoop in and help. And I can help, connect you if you need help with that. So if you didn't win any grants, even if you did, just encourage your school board to apply again in the fall.
Thank
And
you.
one more thing I'll add is we haven't announced this yet, but Our team at Mothers Out Front is working on a national toolkit that should be helpful for parents to build teams and advocate for electric school bus funding in the next round. So that should be coming out late this spring, early this summer. And it never hurts to start bringing together neighbors, friends, other parents in your school system to talk about the need. And we will have some, technical support and materials for you coming out shortly. But yeah, I think just starting those conversations with the people in your school system and community is never a bad idea.
Thank you all so much for coming today. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see all these beautiful LTEs soon. And again, if you'd like to come to our refresher training next month or invite others, please do so. I will follow up with an email with all of this information. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.